You're multitasking, Dave.
I'm multitasking.
Oh, there it goes.
You can be an attorney.
We're ready to go? Welcome, everyone, to our North Ogden City Council meeting this evening. We appreciate your attendance. Prior to this meeting, we had a presentation by FEMA regarding the detention basin that we have been looking at. So we'll begin this meeting this evening with an invocation by Annette Spenlove, our city recorder. And then we'll call on Cale Chandler from Troop 642 to give us the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this beautiful summer evening. We're grateful for this beautiful place we live in and for the country we have. Please bless our service members and their families as they serve this great country. And please bless us as citizens of this great city, that we'll be able to be kind and considerate of each other and make our wants and feelings known without contention and anger and guilt. And please help us to all work together to make this a better community, one that we can all be proud of and one that you can be proud of, and the kind of people we are that live here. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Cale. I'd like to remind you to mute your cell phones so that we have no disturbance during the meeting. I'd like to excuse Councilman Severine and John Call, who are away from town this evening. Our first item will be our consent agenda, discussion or action to consider May 15th City Council meeting minutes. Any questions or discussion on those minutes or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve the meeting minutes from May 15th, 2018 City Council meeting.
Okay, have a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now turn the meeting over for public comments. Please state your name as you come to the podium and your address.
Gary Blacker, 388 East, 3250 North. And you must have told people who was coming tonight. They didn't come to the meeting, I can see. Anyway, I want to thank Annette Spenlove, who's been a friend. We've lived in a home for 47 years, and the last 10 has been the hardest thing we've probably had to do. The last 2 or 3 have been unbearable. We live across the street from a house at 389. You better write this down, because I'm going to challenge every one of you sitting up there tonight to go by it, to go drive by what we have to see every day of our lives. There's a home that has so much garbage and squander, and it's hard to describe what we have to see every day of our life. The garbage cans never get taken in. She's had such a thing as a sale, a yard sale going on the full month of June. Clothes are on the driveway. The wind has blown everything over. They've mowed the lawn one time this summer. Never have used the sprinklers. We live by a garbage pit, and the rest of our neighborhood, and I've got a couple that live on the west of us here with me tonight, and there's a couple more coming, but they haven't come yet. We put up with it day and night. I've talked to Brent 3 or 4 times, sent him a text the week he left in February. But we're out of sight, out of mind. You don't see it, so you're doing nothing about it. My question for you as a council tonight is, do you have someone in place to monitor city codes and restrictions, and are there any? You've got a man, Annette says, that has 2 jobs. He's your city inspector, and then he is supposed to do the checking on citations and code violations. He doesn't do anything. I told Annette if I ever wanted a job, I would like his job of doing that, because we have not had. I've called many times. Annette, can you put up on the screen or not?
I'm not able to.
You're not?
No.
I brought her pictures. I wish you'd have seen them. It's worse, Annette, than what I showed you last week, because the wind has blown down. What do you as a council suggest those of us who live in North Ogden, those of us who've lived this many years and have to look across the street at a garbage dump every day of our lives, and nothing is done about it? She doesn't put garbage cans out, but she doesn't do a thing. My question to you, has she ever had a citation given to her by the city? And the fact is that we're not on 3100, we're on 3250. So out of sight, out of mind. I challenge every one of you to drive by on our street and look at what we have to look at and see. Brent told me that they was getting a new man to be in charge to help protect us. We haven't seen a thing. Annette's got pictures. I wish we could have shown them to you tonight of what we have to see. My question is, are you going to do anything as a city council to protect property owners and the rights to live in this city? We've got neighbors that try very hard to keep their yards clean, and we've got one neighbor that will not do anything but desecrate our city. So my question is to you tonight, and I don't know if you can answer, but if you do not answer me, if you do not help us, I've advertised enough in the substandard paper that I know I've got friends down there. I will take it to them and have them come and take a picture of a North Ogden resident and tell them what we have to live with. So it's up to you as a council. I challenge you. Number one, don't just listen to me. Drive by that address, 389 East, 3250 North, and see for yourself. Might just add that she left 6 o'clock Friday morning. We haven't seen her since that time. She's got cats that are there. You've got a major problem in our city. And I'm just sorry that it has to be across the street from our home that we've lived in for 47 years. So, Mac, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yes, I do.
Come, please. Thank you.
My name is Mac McDonald. I live at 380 East, 3250 North, right next door to Gary. 12 years ago when I moved up into North Ogden, I bought that home without ever walking inside. For 2 reasons. I had Mount Lomond right behind me, and I could see it from the backyard. And before I could enter the home, both Gary on one side and Rulon Twitchell across the street approached me and introduced themselves. I already had my neighbors. I didn't need to walk in the house. 2 great gentlemen. We've since lost Rulon. I know his soft voice and soft demeanor would every once in a while go next door to 389 and talk to them. and they'd clean up their act for a little bit. Well, we no longer have ruling with us to do that. It's not advantageous for me to do it because I have a tendency to come off a little rough when things are bothering me. This bothers me. When I moved to North Ogden, I moved to North Ogden out of the ghetto of Ogden, 23rd and Adams. I brought my children up here. I raised both of my daughters up here, and now I'm bringing grandchildren up here. I fell in love with North Ogden because of my neighbors, which have expanded to the whole street now. One of them I work with to do his and our lawns together. We wore out my lawnmower this year. He bought a riding lawnmower so we can keep doing what we've been doing for 12 years. I'm not going to do the challenges that Gary did. I want to ask a question. What is it we can do? What can we put in order that this does not continue? This is one house right now. But if we can't put a stop to it somehow and get this mess cleaned up, the next person that buys into North Ogden can look and go, I don't have to take care of my yard. I don't have to do anything to it. And that wasn't my attitude. I think Gary and his wife, my next door neighbors, the Twitchells, can all tell you that when we moved in, we didn't have the best of yards in our front yard that we purchased that house. We gutted the whole yard and rebuilt it. We completely did the outside of the house before we ever did anything to the inside of the house. That's what I'd like to see continue in North Ogden, not just the new building going on. We have homes in the 60s down here that are still beautiful, gorgeous homes and are being taken care of by the people that have lived up here for a while. We have this particular place right across the street from us that, as Gary said, has been preparing for a yard sale for the month of June. They still haven't had one. They just painted the exterior of the house for whatever reason, because since it was completed, nobody is at that house. Everybody's abandoned it. The garage door is wide open. I think it's a matter for the police now because it is totally abandoned. The husband has not been there for a while. He comes and gets the kids occasionally. The wife, no better way to say it, she's on some sort of drug. I have no clue. Been out of the drug scene for 40 years now. So I don't know what she's on, but she's always out there doing stuff that never gets completed. She's been working on the corner garden at Mount Loman. Holiday and 3250. She's been working on that corner for 3 years, and it's not completed. They put up gutters when they discovered that everything that they did after building a addition to the house, every time it rained, it came down and flooded the rest of their house. So during the winter months, they have plastic up and gutters steering the water in places other than down in their basement, which still floods every year. So they dig up all of that. That part is still all dug up. Like Gary said, the front lawn has not been cut, and I think it was probably early May when they cut it, and then it hasn't been cut since. So please tell us what we can do, who we need to approach now, and which direction to go, because I know of 4 sets of families that have called into North Ogden and reported this. Some of us have done so 3 or 4 times in the last 6 months, and we're getting nothing. What can we do? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does anybody from the council want to respond? Or I would make mention that we discovered that our code enforcement officer is so busy with building permits that he can't get to the code enforcement. And so I discussed it with the police department this morning, and they'll put an officer on that assignment.
Do you have any power to do anything?
We have ordinances.
Is there a fine?
What can be done?
There's ordinances regarding the cleanup, and if they don't clean it up, the city can clean it up and then send in the bill, those kind of things.
We've tried for many years. Nothing's happened. Absolutely. I still challenge you to come and drive by.
I have.
Have you?
Mhm.
Thank you.
As have I.
Have you? You want to say what
Are
you
we
think?
exaggerating?
Did we exaggerate anything?
That's exactly how you discussed it.
Pictures.
Here's another neighbor. What are you doing there?
Go up and introduce yourself and tell them what you see.
What's the difference?
It does.
Me do it?
Yeah. Just say who you are.
I don't want to stand up. I'm Brian Latin. I sent you guys.
You gotta come to
You need
the,
to go to the microphone because we're on camera.
I'm Brian Latin. I sent you guys an email. Yeah, it's just a disaster over there. I mean, it never changes. Seems if it changes at all, it changes for the worse. It never changes for the better. She starts a project and then never finishes it, and then she starts another project and never finishes it, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. So that's all.
I need his address.
Yep.
Thank you for your, what's your address?
What's my address? It's 394 East, 3250 North. I'm right across the street.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Melanie Barker, 2524 Barker Parkway. As far as the sound ordinance last week that we spoke about, I just want you to be aware that they are now having practices. We live up by the bridge, so we're quite a ways away from it. I was in the very back of our yard, and I could clearly hear them singing with no amplification. So if you put amplification at 90 at the property line, which is right across the street from our homes, we are going to be blasted out. So just keep that in mind as you review these sound ordinances, because that's going to be really loud. We might need to change it to 10 feet in front of the stage or something like that so that the sound is not so disruptive. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good information.
Kim Christensen, 2428 Barker Parkway. I just wanted to kind of add to Melanie's comments about the noise. Today, as I was working in the yard for most of the day, I could hear everything. People talking down over there, the constant beeping, the constant drilling. There was some big loud drill, I don't know what it was, that was over there. But if I can hear somebody talking without any microphones, it does concern me with this noise ordinance, you know. And I wasn't here last week. I was at girls' camp, lots of fun. So I'm not sure if I'm repeating what's being said, but as I read through some of the restrictions you're trying to put on us as residents, that's a huge problem. If our neighbor is not allowed to have a karaoke party because that's what he does every year on the 4th of July, because you as a city want to do something across the street, then you better darn well tell everybody else in the city they can't have any type of a karaoke party in the city of North Ogden because you're restricting these, so we need to restrict everybody. You're running into some First Amendment issues when you start telling people what they can and cannot do on their property. And it is concerning. If I want to have a wedding reception or some sort of a party in my backyard, like I've always done, some sort of a gathering, I'm not allowed to because the city is having something across the street. I think you should probably think about that and maybe reconsider what you're trying to put in place. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. If there's no other comments, we'll begin with item 3, discussion or action to consider an ordinance for purchasing policy. Presenter, where'd he go?
Over here.
Hi, Mayor.
You're hiding over there. Presenter will be Evan Nelson, our finance director. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have several items in the Finance Department to talk about tonight. And we have several members of staff here as well who may have input into these discussions. The first is the purchasing policy. Last year, at the conclusion of our audit, our auditors recommended that we look at revising our purchasing policy. We had already been having some challenges with it, and we were talking about making some changes. And so we were happy to do that. We did a full review of the policy, and we've made some proposed changes that have been included in your council packet. A lot of the changes are insignificant, such as grammar, capitalization, those sorts of things. We also eliminated, or we're proposing to eliminate, portions of the code that seem to be unnecessary or redundant. We're trying to simplify the code, make it easier to understand and easier to follow. So we are proposing some changes that are significant, though, and so I'd like to review those changes that I feel like are more significant. And of course, you can talk about any of the changes that are being proposed. So first of all, we're proposing that we eliminate the requirement for purchase orders for purchases that are less than $5,000. In the past, the threshold was actually $200, and it became very difficult and cumbersome to try to do purchase orders on every purchase under that threshold. So this is a change that will help with efficiency, and it will leave discretion in the department manager to approve purchases that are less than $5,000. Any questions on that particular change?
That was recommended by the auditor, wasn't it, to change it to that amount?
They didn't actually specify an exact dollar amount, but they recommended that we review, especially our purchase order process in the current code is sort of unclear, and they wanted us to clarify what the requirement and process is and what the roles and responsibilities are. So the $5,000, we looked at Syracuse City at their purchasing policy, and that was the threshold that they had, and so we felt like that was reasonable. It also aligns with our asset capitalization threshold. So when we purchase assets or construct assets that are valued at $5,000 and higher, we capitalize those and track them as assets. But anything less than $5,000 we expense, and we don't capitalize those. So we felt like it would work well with the asset capitalization policy to have that threshold be the same. The next item is purchase order approval. We're proposing to change the threshold for to align with the same $5,000, so that $5,000 up to $25,000, the city administrator and the finance director or city treasurer would approve those purchase orders. That used to go down to 500, so that would then align with the $5,000 threshold that we just talked about.
Evan, that requires two approvals, right? Two individuals, is that the way I'm reading it? That correct?
Yes, the city administrator is required, and then the finance director or city treasurer.
Okay.
So two of those three would have to approve it. And keep in mind, when we're approving purchase orders, these are all subject to what the council has approved in the budget. So there's kind of an added layer of oversight and approval. And then I'll also say one of the reasons for having purchase orders is to ensure that the policies are being followed as far as procurement, bidding out contracts, getting competitive quotations. If we don't have a purchase order requirement, which is basically a pre-authorization, then the invoices get submitted for payment after the commitment has already been made to make the purchase. And then at that point, it's kind of too late to ensure that we've followed the right procedures. So I think what we're proposing with the purchase order requirement will help us to ensure that we're following those proper processes. The next one is public advertising. Well, I guess I should say anything over 25,000. This didn't really change, but anything over 25,000, the city administrator, the mayor or mayor pro tem, and the finance director or city treasurer would need to sign off. So that's 3 signatures when it's over 25,000. The next part is public advertising. So in the past, we've been required to advertise competitive bids exceeding $25,000. One of those advertisements was in the newspaper, and we have felt like putting those advertisements in the newspaper is quite costly and not very effective. So we are proposing to eliminate the newspaper advertising requirement, but to continue to advertise on the state public notice website and on the city website. And generally, our employees also reach out to contractors or vendors that they have worked with in the past or are aware of that would possibly be interested in a particular contract or purchase opportunity. Do you have any comments about that newspaper elimination part?
Council, Mayor, can I mention something about that? The city has put in 3 advertisements for public notice or public hearing in the last month. And Ogden Publishing has taken over. It's a new owner of Standard Examiner. And all 3 of them had problems. They couldn't publish them the day we needed them published to be clear, to meet code. And the municipal clerks are taking that up with the state legislature. In this next legislation, they're putting together a new bill on that where we don't have to advertise our public notices anymore in the newspaper. But we will still be required to put them on the state website and on our websites and probably hang them out somewhere for public to see them. But the newspaper has made 3 mistakes in 1 month with our city's notices. And on the last one, they called me, and I told them that they couldn't charge me because it didn't go in when it needed to.
Thank you.
The next section is purchases between $5,000 and $25,000. Those purchases would require 3 written bids, so that we're ensuring competition, but a public advertisement would not be required on those. The city has been using a choosing by advantages approach in awarding contracts. We've added some language under this title that I guess provides some guidance on how that process works. And it basically allows the city to evaluate proposed contracts on criteria in addition to just price, so that the city makes a purchase or a contract that's in the best interest of the city, even sometimes when the price may not be the lowest price. So other considerations may be considered in those selections. So we've added that section to the purchasing policy, and we've identified that the mayor is the one that would be authorized to approve the awarding of those contracts under the choosing by advantages provision. Our code has a list of purchases that are exempt from the bidding requirements, and we are proposing to add several more types of purchases that would be exempt. And here's that list. Professional services that are less than $15,000 in a fiscal year. Legal services on a per case or short-term basis. Subscriptions, magazines, software, etc. Elections expenses. Memberships and trainings. Drug testing, physicals, etc. Realtors, appraisers, and title work. Performers, such as for the Cherry Days events. Contracts not suited to bidding due to proximity and or other relevant factors as approved by the city administrator and finance director. One example of this is when the city purchases rock products. We have a rock quarry, I guess, just close by, and that's the quarry that we typically have used when the city needs those materials. And it's determined that in general it would usually be impractical to have a company from Salt Lake or a far distance away to bring those things, or for us to go and pick those things up from farther distances. So that's why that one is on the list. And when there is an exception like that, the reasoning for it would be documented on the invoice or the purchase order. And then the last one is when the city council enters into a contract for goods or services and identifies why it is in the best interest of the city. I think John talked with you about that provision at the last council meeting. So the next item is we've added a section for disposition of real property, and these were some changes that John had recommended. I think he was trying to make our policy more consistent with the state statutes, and particularly needing to define what a significant parcel is. So we're basically defining all parcels as significant, but making a clarification that utility easements would not be a significant parcel. We've made a few changes to the requirements about recording fixed assets and the responsibilities related to that. And then we've added some detail to the process for the city acquiring real property and the requirements for recording those acquisitions. So that's a summary of the main points that I wanted to cover. If you have questions about other sections or any of those that we have talked about, I'm happy to respond. Dave and Tiffany and Annette are also here and may have thoughts too if you have questions.
Councilman Swanson.
Evan, back up on the choosing by advantages. I know as we've used this system, for lack of a better term, in both hiring and bids and other selection processes that we have here in the city, the council has always been involved and been informed, at least, of what's going on. I'm wondering if there ought to be language added to that provision there that because the mayor is the chief executive over the various departments and does have that ability, but I'd like to see something in there that includes maybe after consultation with the council. So, because we're the ones that have the fiscal responsibility over the city's budget and all that kind of stuff. And I'd like to at least have it in there so that while, the current administration has been very good, who knows what future administrations might do. And I'd hate to set somebody up for failure or just for a difficult situation by not including that the council should at least, especially in a circumstance where it's not the lowest bid, that the council's brought up to speed as to why, and that there's an understanding there.
So would you like that to be a requirement for the council to approve it, or just to be aware of it?
I don't think the council needs to approve it, because then the chief executive is not performing as the chief executive. And we've gone out of the legislative, and now we're in the executive, and we're the legislative body.
I see.
And so I think there needs to be that separation of powers. But I do think we ought to be informed.
Okay.
It's not just a stroke of the pen, but especially where it's not the lowest bid, that we're informed and made aware of and consulted, and then the executive does what the executive does.
Okay. I think that's reasonable.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to interrupt here. If you know that when we do those bids that get up that high, usually 2 council members serve on a committee,
Right.
that we do that. And choosing by advantages, some of you have gone through that training that are here. Not all of our department heads have, a few have, but choosing by advantages doesn't always mean the lowest bid. It's part of that training we went through. And anyway, but as you know, you approve the budget that gives the mayor the authority to go ahead and accept this. But you're right, this council's really good and the mayor's really good always to bring that back to you. And it might not happen later on down the road, but because of the legislative side, you approve the budget, and then the mayor manages that budget on the other side of it.
So do you think we ought to change the language in the code right now? So
that would be my preference, that we add something in there that, let's see, I'll get it here where my eyes can actually see it. Selection of bidder contract is not the lowest bid if documentation is provided that demonstrates the mayor is authorized to approve such purchases or contracts after consultation with the city council. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not a master writer or anything like that, but in my mind, that makes it clear that the mayor is authorized to make those purchases and to sign off on those contracts, but that we're asking that it be done after, maybe consultation is the wrong word, maybe informing, or I don't know.
I think that's the question, if you want the council to provide authorization or if you just want them to be aware.
It's information that I think we're looking for, so that when residents call us and say, why did this not, we had an instance with, a leaf truck, where we didn't pick a particular vendor who happened to be a resident here in North Ogden, and they were upset that they didn't get picked. And it was helpful for the entire council to know what the process had been and why the vendor that actually had a more expensive truck, but what the good reasons were, the very valid reasons that we chose that particular vendor.
I see.
Instead of, it just gives us information that we can respond to residents with.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Well, if I could see.
Okay, sorry.
Can we have an
It
interpreter
says,
up there?
The mayor is authorized to approve purchases and the awarding of bids and contracts after consulting with the city council as to why a certain vendor was chosen.
That sounds good to me. I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't read between the lines, but I'm interested in what the other council members think.
Did we say you wanted to have after consulting, or?
I would like it after, so that we're not apprised of why after the decision's been made, I think is a courtesy.
Okay,
Since we do have
that's what I need to know.
Yeah, I think it just is a courtesy, if nothing else, that information is given to us and explained, and then it's like, oh, that makes sense. We're not really giving approval or disapproval, but just being informed of why the executive is making the decision they do.
Should we put there consulting or informing?
Informing is fine with me, but I'm talking a lot.
Just an N.
Sorry.
That's a suggestion on my part.
I'm not setting.
Yeah, no, I
Why a certain
agree.
vendor
I
was
think
chosen.
informing fits what I'm thinking better than consultation.
After informing the city as to why a certain vendor was chosen. You want, I mean, this doesn't make sense. Two vendors that are not the lowest bid. You want to be informed on everything, whether they're the lowest bid or not. Is that correct?
I'm not so and again, I'm doing all the talking here. So for me, I'm not as concerned about knowing on every contract. The ones that I think where there could be questions and or sticking points is when the vendor chosen is not the lowest bid. In my mind, that's the circumstance where we'd like to have the information so that we understand why.
To give you an idea as far as choosing by advantages that we run yearly, I was just trying to think of how many we actually even do in a year. You're probably only looking at maybe 5 contracts a whole year that we use choosing by advantages.
Yeah.
And it's just those big, $100,000, $50,000, $400,000 project where we do these things. So.
I think it's, in the circumstances where the lowest bidder is not the one chosen, I think it's just good for the city council to understand, to have be filled in on why, and it's just a good balance.
It probably wouldn't hurt for us to tell you all, to be honest, to tell you all the choosing by advantages. Like, for instance, this last project, 2 weeks ago, we chose Parsons to do our road construction. I mean, because it's a $500,000 project, you probably should know who's in our city working on that big of a project anyway. So I don't think it would hurt to leave it like this.
So, like it was, or like I just changed it?
No, like you changed it.
Okay, let me read it one more time, council, so you can see what I did. The mayor is authorized to approve purchases and the awarding of bids and contracts after informing the city council as to why a certain vendor was selected that demonstrates the advantage to the city in selecting the particular service, product, or vendor. Okay with that?
That's good to me.
Mayor, sorry, may I?
Sure.
I don't want to give the impression either that this is about mistrust of department heads or the sitting mayor or anyone else in office. I think it's just good governance to have that awareness. We've been elected to oversee and and just to make sure that things don't go awry. And
Honest people, honest.
It's trust but verification, right? Isn't that what we hear often? So,
Yes.
Having said on some of those interviews when we have chosen by advantage, I think that's a good idea too, because we know why we did it, but the council doesn't know how we came to that conclusion. So I think that's a good idea, to be informed. as to why or how it happened. So that works.
Any other comments or discussion? Questions?
Do we have an ordinance number?
Yes, it's 2018-12.
Okay, we'll try this. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve 2018-12. Is that what it was?
Correct.
On, let's see. With the, consider the ordinance for the purchasing policy as stated.
Okay, it's been moved that we approve 2018-12 regarding our purchasing policy.
I'll second.
We have a second. Begin, any other discussion or questions? If not, we'll begin our voting. Councilwoman Stoker?
Yes.
Councilman Swenson?
Yes.
Councilman Barker?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is a public hearing to receive comments regarding amendments to the fiscal year budget. Presenter is Evan Nielsen, Finance Director.
Thank you. We are right at the end of our fiscal year, and we would like to propose some amendments to the current year budget before the year is through. The council is able to amend the budget during the fiscal year. Once the fiscal year is over, you can't amend the budget anymore. So we're bringing some proposals to you and asking for your approval. I'll walk through these proposals. The first is our original budget included a part-time building inspector that was in addition to what we previously had. And as the year has gone by and building activity has continued to increase, we came to you and proposed that position be changed from part-time to full-time. And the council approved that recommendation, so we're proposing that the budget be adjusted to allow for that. The second one is lifeguard wages. This was a change that was discussed during our budget meetings, and when the council approved that, we made those adjustments to the pool season. So it started, the increased wages started before the new fiscal year began. This change was included in the February budget amendments, and we had a mistake on the account, the general ledger account. So we're bringing this back just to clean it up and get it in the right account. The next one is the Transportation Impact Fee Fund. We also had an error on this one where we had budgeted all of the transportation impact fee revenue in the interest revenue line. So it looked like we were anticipating a big amount of interest, which wasn't really the case. So we just wanted to clean that one up as well. The next item is an amendment for the retaining wall and fence at the senior center in the amount of $6,249. The revenue source for that is fund balance. The next one is the skate park. We had budgeted the skate park in fiscal year 2017, and a lot of that budget was still remaining at the end of the fiscal year, so we're proposing to roll over the remaining budget of $137,210.87, and then asking you to approve an additional $5,776.13, which were additional costs beyond what you had previously approved. The next one is the Public Works Building remodel. At the end of last fiscal year, we had about $6,300 still remaining in that project budget. And so we're proposing to roll that amount forward plus an additional $424 for a total budget of $6,752 in the current fiscal year. And fund balance in the capital projects fund would cover that. The city has come to a settlement on the lawsuit related to the property line at the Public Works facility. And so we're proposing an amendment to the budget to cover the cost of surveying that was required, $1,558. Improvement Fund, this is the fund that tracks the revenues and expenditures related to the homes that the city has purchased for the future widening of 450 East. Last fiscal year, we transferred $17,000 from the Capital Projects Fund into this fund because the revenues had not been sufficient to cover the expenses. Since that time, we've started getting revenues in that more than cover expenditures, and so we're proposing to transfer the $17,000 back into the Capital Projects Fund. Also in this fund, we were not very sure what the expenses were going to look like when we set the budget for this fund, and we weren't sure how many homes we would actually be able to purchase. We ended up purchasing more homes than we expected, and the renovation costs to get those homes ready for renting out were a lot higher than expected. So we're proposing to increase the budget for those expenditures up to $60,000. Previously it was budgeted at $20,000. The revenues that we have received in that fund are more than sufficient to cover those expenditures. And a lot of those expenditures are startup costs, so it's not something that we would expect on an ongoing basis. Those are all of the proposed changes for the city's budget. The last change relates to the CDA, the RDA budget. So I guess I'll save that until we get to that item.
Questions or discussion? We'll open up for public hearing regarding this particular item. Seeing none, we'll
Move to close the public hearing.
have a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion or action to consider an ordinance amending fiscal year budget. Presenter, Evan Nelson, our finance director.
I guess we just need an ordinance number in order to adopt the changes that we've just discussed. We have proposed approval of this ordinance.
Ordinance number is 2018-13.
I'll work on this one. Make a motion that we approve ordinance 2018-13, amending the fiscal year budget 2017 to 2018, as presented by Evan.
We have a motion to approve the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget, number 2018-13.
Second.
Have a second. Begin the voting with Councilman Swenson,
Yes.
Councilman Barker,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker.
Yes.
Motion approved. We'll now convene in the RDA meeting. Item 1, public hearing to receive comments regarding the amendments to the RDA budget for fiscal year 2017-2018.
You need a motion to convene in the RDA.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to convene the RDA agenda?
So moved.
Have a move. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So is that discussion?
Do you want me to present that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
This amendment relates to the Community Development Area Fund. In the previous year budget, the Redevelopment Agency Board approved a $200,000 contribution of money from the CDA to go toward the ACE hardware development project. And this project didn't end up getting completed in the previous fiscal year. So we are proposing that $200,000 be rolled forward into the current fiscal year. Obviously the project is done and we have paid the money as agreed upon, but we wanted to make sure that the approval from the previous year was reflected in the current year. So we'd need to have the public hearing for this, and then we propose adoption of an ordinance amending the budget.
Okay, public hearing is open regarding this particular item. Seeing none.
Move
Have a
to close the
motion.
public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, a discussion or action to consider an ordinance amending the RDA budget for fiscal year 2017-2018. Presenter, Evan Nelson.
We would propose approval of the ordinance to allow for the changes that we just discussed. And we need an ordinance number.
The number is RDA 2018-13.
Any questions or discussion?
You're up, Brian.
Oh, I get to do another one? All right, and make a motion that we approve the RDA ordinance RDA 2018-13, the RDA budget for fiscal year 2017 through 2018, amending the fiscal year budget.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the ordinance amending the RDA budget for fiscal year 2017-2018, ordinance number 2018-13. Do you have a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? We'll begin the voting with Councilman Barker,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Swanson, sorry.
Bob, Larry,
Motion carries.
Frank, whatever.
Mayor, I move we adjourn the RDA meeting and reconvene in the regular meeting.
Second.
It's been a motion to adjourn and reconvene a regular meeting. We also received a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll then continue with our active agenda. Discussion or action to consider a resolution amending the consolidated fee schedule. Our presenter is Evan Nelson, Finance Director.
Thank you, Mayor. As part of our budget process each year, we review the fee schedule and propose changes to the City Council. We have some changes tonight to propose and ask for your approval. We are proposing that you adopt these by the resolution that has been included in your packet. So these are the changes that we're proposing. First, on our green waste pit card fee, we're just proposing to change the language so that it doesn't say a one-day entry, but to say a single entry, just to clarify that each card allows one entry rather than a full day of unlimited entries. And this is in alignment with our current practice in the way that that program is administered. The next item is the fee for new home deposits for offsite improvements. This is a fee that's charged in connection with building permits. And it's basically a deposit to ensure that contractors repair sidewalks that are broken during the construction process. So we charge this $500 fee, and then we give it back to the applicant after inspecting the site to make sure that the sidewalk is in good condition. We're proposing to change that from $500 up to $1,000, just based on the idea that actually repairing a sidewalk will generally cost more than $500. So that's that one. The next one is the home occupation license. Last year, I think it was, the legislature made changes to the laws and have limited cities on who they can charge fees to related to home occupations. And so we're just trying to make our fee schedule consistent with that legislation, basically to say that our fee applies only to high impact home occupations, but not all home occupations. We're proposing to eliminate fees related to the Barker Park Amphitheater rental, simply because the fee that we had in the schedule was related to the old amphitheater, and new fees have not yet been developed or proposed. So
Just taking it out.
the next one is a stormwater fee. We have a category for churches and schools, and we're proposing to change that label to institutional, which would include churches, schools, and government facilities. That's a lower churches, schools, and what we would add government facilities pay a lower stormwater rate than commercial businesses. We're also including the utility rate adjustments that were discussed in the budget. The increases that have been proposed would apply to all the categories of each rate, which are resident, non-resident, and non-residential. The total increase for a basic utility account, a basic residential utility account, would be $5.87. There's also an increase for the second recycling can of $2.35. We have another item related to utility rates that I would like to go over, but if you have any questions on any of the other fees we've discussed, maybe we could try to respond to those first.
Yes.
Evan, on the green waste pit card fee, are we talking about the one-day cards that somebody can come and buy, not the punch card, correct?
Let's let Dave respond.
So yeah, we got completely rid of the full 1 day. And the reason for that was because it was the same price as a one punch, and so
Right.
somebody was coming in, sometimes they would come in 6, 7, 8 times. And what we were finding, it wasn't our normal resident that had a problem with it. We were finding that it was commercial people inside of our city that, that they were coming back and dumping here, but they were using it for commercial use, and so.
I just wanted to be sure that it was the one-day use, single-day use, the single-use card, not the punch card.
Yeah.
Right, okay. That answers my question then, yeah.
So the punch card, is it also one punch per entry?
It's one punch per entry.
Okay. Any other questions on the fees we've discussed so far? So we would like to talk a little bit about our proposal related to tiered water rates. The water department, working with our engineer, has made a proposal that we have an additional rate per 1,000 gallons that is charged for the zones of the city that require the water to be pumped up the hill. And I think Dave is probably better prepared to explain that in more detail. Just to mention, we did include the map in the packet, so you may want to bring that up.
Dave, can you use the microphone?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so I've brought this to the council before. What it is that, so our city is set into different zones. From the lowest zone in our city being, zone 1, which is, basically the flat part of the city, all the way up to zone 10, which is all the way up above the cove, where our highest tank is up there. And these zones are based on pressure. So what we do is we try to pump all of the water up to the top, and then we release the water down to our citizens. And what we use is PRVs to control that all the way down, controlling the pressure so that not everybody at the bottom has all the pressure and everybody at the top doesn't have any pressure at all. And so what we do is we control those zones, and, it's between 45 and 70 PSI in each one of those zones. And so the way that these zones work is this zone 7, 8, 9, and 10, they have a lot of energy cost connected to them because we have to take the water from down here on the flats in the wells, and we have to actually pump it all the way up the hill. Taking it to the very first, where we pump it from is here at well 3, which is next to the old Public Works building. We start pumping it there, and we take it all the way up to near Frog Rock, if you know where I'm talking about there. You pump it up to Frog Rock. From Frog Rock, we have to pump it up to Northview, which is all the way at the top of our city limits. And then from there, we have it in a tank that we can pump it all the way over to the cove. And then that comes down and ends up feeding these zones 7, 8, 9, and 10. And so, you can understand that there's a lot of cost in pumping all this water all the way up the hill to feed the zone 7, 8, 9, and 10. And so, talking with our engineer, he had put in place a schedule where we had to actually taken our energy cost and what it cost to actually produce that water for these people in these different zones. The reason we're wanting to bring it to you now is just trying to put it in action before we start actually having these zones full of houses. Zone 7 has the most people, and it was between like 40 and 60 homes right now are in Zone 7. And then 8, 9, and 10, I think only have about 30 homes total in those 3 zones, because most of that's just the cove development. In the future, it'll go west, but our thinking is that let's put it in place now before we start putting homes up there.
It's right here. Additional, the 19 and 27 cents.
Yeah, so 19 cents is for zone 7, because we only have to pump it twice up to zone 7 from well 3 to up to Frog Rock, and then there it goes into a storage tank at Northview, and so those people only have to get it pumped twice. Where when we take it up to the cove, we have to go from Northview all the way to the cove, so there's an additional pumping fee for 8, 9, and 10. Which is 27 cents, yeah.
So it's 19 cents per 1,000?
And it's per 1,000 gallons, so it'll go, so that, and we did it this way so that who is using the water is the one that's actually paying it. We talked about putting it on the base rate, but then we didn't find it fair. If you only, if a family of 2 up there, why should you be paying the same amount for a family of 10 in that same zone? When this what we're trying to do is just get our energy costs back for those pumping zones.
Questions for Dave or Evan?
Mayor, I just wanted to add that we also talked about the facility costs, the cost of the pumps and the pump houses that are connected with these zones, and we aren't really prepared to propose an additional fee related to maintenance and future replacement of those assets. But we felt like at least getting this per 1,000-gallon energy fee in place would be a wise thing, and perhaps in the future we may come back with another proposal related to maintenance and replacement of those assets.
So Dave, make it so I can understand this right. So if it says per gallons of usage, just regular 12,000 to 18,000 gallons is $4.70 per resident. But if you're in zone 8, that would be $4.97, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Clear as water.
Clear as water.
Any other questions on this or other fee changes?
Just a thank you to Evan and to Dave and to Lauren for working. We've been talking about this for a couple of years now.
We have.
As development has gone up the mountain there, we've talked often about the inequity of those that don't have to have it pumped paying for the energy that those of us that live higher up on the hill that we have to pay, that is cost to get us the water, and felt it only equitable to have a tiered program. So thank you for the work, and we're finally here.
Any other questions regarding the fee schedule in total?
What's the resolution number?
05-2018.
Mayor, I'd move that we approve Resolution 05-2018, approving the amending of the consolidated fee schedule as discussed and displayed.
We have a motion to approve the resolution amending the consolidated fee schedule number 05-2018. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any questions or discussion? Begin our voting then with Councilman Barker,
Yes.
Councilman Turner,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Swanson.
Yes.
Motion approved. Next item on the agenda is public comments.
Susan Clements, 668 East, 3125 North. We haven't talked about the deer problem for a while. They're kind of munching on my tomato plants and my pepper plants. Do we have anything in the future? I know did we ever do a deer count, Councilman Swanson, in the winter?
We kind of did.
Kind of did.
It's really difficult to do it economically, to get any kind of a reliable count. Probably the best way to do it would be using some kind of infrared flyover with a helicopter where we can do it at night and we can see where they are and we can count them pretty easily. That's really expensive. So was it Jordan Wayment?
Yes.
Is that correct? Yeah, Jordan Wayment. He's really trying hard, and we're trying to work with DWR and various entities to get a handle on how many there are. We're just really struggling with feeling that the numbers we're coming up with are reliable. And right now we couldn't tell you if they're high or they're low or they're just right, and that's part of our issue.
Right.
So and right now they're kind of all up in the hills.
Not all of them.
Not all of them. And so we're trying to get a handle on it, but it's going to take some time.
I have two neighbors that consistently have deer. One neighbor that sees new fawns born every spring in her backyard.
Yeah.
And so I know the herd's continuing to grow, and they are staying in the city a lot more than they
Yeah,
ever have been.
the issue with the count is just trying to determine how much is a migratory herd and how much is the stationary, because it's that stationary group that we're concerned about.
Right.
And that we want to, if necessary, do something about. We're just not confident that we have any kind of data that gives us a clear answer.
Okay, so we're still working on that.
It's still in process, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, Sean Casey, 2444 Barker Parkway. Communication, I like the consolidated fee schedule because there's one place we go to find that information. I like the direction the website is going, and I would encourage everybody that's involved on how we communicate to place all of the information easily accessible within the website. So that if we do further dissemination, other points, whether it's magazines or websites or Facebook or whatever, there's always one place that we can find. So if I'm not a Facebook guy, I can just log on to the northogdencity.com and find info. So that would be great. Also, I would encourage you to go to the Ogden Twilight Show this Thursday again, just so that you can get an idea of, it's not Frampton, Carl, but it's a good band, and the promoter that rents the Ogden Amphitheater for these Ogden Twilights has done a really fantastic job, and I think it's worth going. You have about 6 more, but it's a fun one this Thursday. They start at 7. Cheryl could probably get you a hookup, or at least a personal tour of the facilities down there. So, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you for your suggestion. If there's no other comments from the public, we'll go to the City Council. Councilman Turner, any comments?
Just curious, we have a meeting next Tuesday? And it's the 4th is Wednesday. We plan on
We
having
do not have a
meeting.
meeting next Tuesday.
Okay. That's awesome. Good idea.
Okay.
All I have.
Okay, Councilman Barker?
I have a question about the amphitheater. Are we gonna restripe the parking lot
Yes.
before the play?
Yes. Well, it'll be before the 4th. It was supposed to be actually today, and he pushed me off till probably Thursday.
Okay. I was just up there and I was just curious what our count came to and if we're gonna sell, how many tickets we can sell.
Kind of hard to see how the stripes too.
Right now we can sell 4 tickets because there's one stall. Okay.
Councilman Swanson?
No, nothing.
Councilwoman Stoker?
Just a couple, if the council has any questions on Cherry Days the morning of, being there at 9, no later than 9:30. And I was kind to all of you this year. We're riding instead of walking. So
she made me walk all the way back up the hill last year.
I did.
All the way down and all the way back
You survived.
up. I'm still dying.
You lived to tell. So
Riding Harleys this year, or what are we?
Side by sides.
Oh, okay.
So.
Harleys with the sidecar.
So if you don't have any questions, those are what's going on. Okay, that's all.
Sure.
Thank you. I have no comments. Annette?
Just a reminder that Friday is the Grand Marshal Dinner at the Senior Center at 6 p.m. And Saturday is the Miss North Ogden pageant. This year it's going to be held at Ogden High School. Weber High is getting a new air conditioning system, and they're not done with that. And Fremont was too expensive, so they went to Ogden High. And your tickets are right in front of you.
Oh, and that, just a comment on the Grand Marshal Dinner. I know that usually the Youth Council helps serve at that. Part of the challenge they're having this year is there's the play practice, and then they have something else going on that night. So if any of you have kids that may want to help serve, either call me or call my wife, and we can get them there to help. So
And let me know tomorrow how many you have, and I'll see if we can get some also.
I don't know. She just was telling me last night that there's, I think she had 5 so far confirmed.
That won't, yeah,
No,
we
and
need
so,
about 15.
Yeah, so she's still working on it, but.
Okay.
Also, that reminds me too, they could, any of us who can help after the 4th at 6:30 the next morning to go help pick up at the park and around would be appreciated to help the youth council pick up the garbage.
Is there such a thing?
There is.
6:30 in the morning?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
There's also a 4 o'clock too.
Okay. Dave?
No, sir.
Tiffany? Okay. Thank you for your comments. Next time, a discussion or action to enter into closed meeting regarding a personnel issue.
I need to adjourn.
Adjourn after.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Have a motion to enter into a closed meeting.
Second.
Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll convene into a closed meeting.
Give ourselves like 5 minutes or whatever to change the tape and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We still use tape.